The Retro Football League presents The Extra Point. Powered by Wolverine Studios Draft Day Sports Pro Football. It's time to take the field. What are you bringing to the table? And now, for our host, Lance McAllister.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Extra Point. I'm Lance McAllister, your host, bringing you the most comprehensive coverage of the RFL, the Retro Football League. We're here to break down Week 5's action, examine the key plays, discuss the standout performances, and look ahead to what's next. So, hold on to your seats, things are about to get real interesting, real fast in the world of retro football. Let's get started. In a battle of AFC powerhouses, the Miami Dolphins edged out the Buffalo Bills 23-17 on a rainy day in South Florida. Despite Buffalo's early lead in the first quarter with a field goal, the Dolphins quickly rallied back, ending the first half with a 17-10 lead. The Dolphins' efficient offense, led by Bob Greasy's 211 passing yards and Mike Hogan's tenacious 106-yard ground game, kept the Dolphins ahead. The game was a thrilling display of defensive prowess, with the Dolphins' Steve Towle registering 8 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss. The Bills put up an equally stiff defense, with Robin Cole making 9 tackles, 2 for loss, and a sack. However, it was the Dolphins' ability to control the clock, holding possession for over 37 minutes, that ultimately wore down the Bills' defense. Despite a fourth-quarter surge from the Bills, the Miami Dolphins held their ground, securing the win. The Bills' standout performer was running back Tony Nathan, who rushed for 122 yards, averaged 6.8 yards per carry, and scored twice. Notably, the Dolphins did not turn over the ball, whereas the Bills lost a fumble. Despite the loss, Jack Lambert emerged as the defensive player of the game with his 5 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. Game 2 of Week 7 saw the Pittsburgh Steelers triumph over the Cincinnati Bengals, scoring 35 to the Bengals' 23. While the 69-degree weather with a 9 miles per hour wind and rain could have been a game-changer, the Steelers remained unfazed. Throughout the game, the Steelers maintained consistency in their scoring, with 7 points in each quarter. Terry Bradshaw was instrumental in this victory, completing 16 out of 19 passes for 187 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jack DeLoplane also made a significant contribution to the Steelers' win with 14 rushes for 69 yards and a touchdown. On the other hand, the Bengals, despite having a slightly higher total yardage of 330 yards compared to the Steelers' 322, couldn't capitalize on their possessions. The Bengals scored 9 points in the first quarter and 7 in the second, but their momentum faltered in the third quarter with no points scored. Their rush yardage was noteworthy at 211 yards, with Charlie Young rushing 26 times for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns. However, crucial errors such as 2 lost fumbles, 5 sacks, and a costly interception dampened their performance. Despite having a slightly longer time possession of 2,047 minutes, the Bengals couldn't transform their efforts into a win. The Steelers, with their superior defensive tactics led by Rollie Woolsey, effectively contained the Bengals' offensive attempts. Game 3 brought an interesting matchup between the Cleveland Browns and the Washington Redskins. Despite the Browns' early lead with a field goal in the first quarter and another in the second, the Redskins managed to catch up, scoring a touchdown in the second quarter to edge past the Browns. The Browns couldn't keep up their momentum in the second half, failing to score any points in the third or fourth quarters. On the other hand, the Redskins added 10 points in the last quarter to cement their win, ending the game 17-6 in their favor. Offensively, the Browns outperformed the Redskins in rushing yards, 114-109, but fell short in the passing game with only 92 passing yards to the Redskins' 111. The Browns were in possession for slightly longer than the Redskins, 30.2 minutes to 29.8 minutes, but committed more penalties, 6 to the Redskins' 2. Notably, the Browns quarterback Brian Sipe and running back Greg Pruitt carried much of the team's offensive performance, with Sipe passing for 92 yards and Pruitt rushing for 93 yards. On the Redskins' side, quarterback Joe Theismann and running back Calvin Hill were the standouts, with Theismann passing for 111 yards and a touchdown and Hill rushing for 71 yards. The game ended without a declared offensive or defensive player of the game. The Philadelphia Eagles soared high during their match against the St. Louis Cardinals last week, ending the game with a sweeping 30-9 victory. Despite a relatively balanced playing field in terms of total yards, with the Cardinals securing 255 yards and the Eagles landing at 286, the Cardinals struggled to convert their possession into points. With the Cardinals scoring 3 points in the first 3 quarters and failing to score in the fourth, the Eagles, on the other hand, had a consistent run throughout. Eagles quarterback Joe Ferguson, had an impressive performance, completing 15 out of 24 passes for a total of 143 yards and securing a touchdown. The Cardinals QB, Joe Montana, although completing more passes, 16 out of 25, could only manage 131 yards. The Eagles rusher, Jerry Eckwood, was steady with 20 rushes for 63 yards, averaging 3.2 yards per rush, and making a significant touchdown, while Walter Payton of the Cardinals ran 29 times for 124 yards. On the defensive side, John Bunting led for the Eagles with 10 tackles, and Rod Martin of the Cardinals had 9. Chuck Christ made a notable contribution to the Eagles' defense, making 3 tackles and an interception. The Cardinals held the ball for almost 29 minutes, while the Eagles controlled it for just over 30 minutes, highlighting the Eagles' more aggressive and efficient play. In the Week 7 matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints, the Saints dominated, emerging victorious with a decisive 33-3 win. The game, played in challenging weather conditions with a steady rainfall and a consistent wind speed of 12 miles per hour, was marked by the Saints' superior ball control. They had possession for an impressive 40 minutes and 18 seconds. Saints quarterback Archie Manning led the offensive onslaught with a stellar performance, completing 14 of his 20 passes for 164 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Buccaneers' offense struggled mightily against the aggressive Saints' defense, managing only 139 total yards. Tampa Bay's quarterback, Danny White, had a particularly rough day, completing just 7 of 18 passes for a paltry 40 yards. The Bucs' leading rusher, Charlie Davis, had a notable performance with 80 yards on just 11 rushes, but it was not enough to overcome the Saints' defensive prowess. Phil Villapiano took the Defensive Player of the Game accolade with 9 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble. Meanwhile, New Orleans running back Chuck Muncie was the Offensive Player of the Game, terrorizing the Bucs' defense with 119 yards on 22 carries and contributing in the passing game with a catch for 2 yards. In a thrilling showdown, the New York Giants nudged past the visiting San Francisco 49ers in a narrow 31-28 victory. The Giants set the tone early with a strong first-half performance, scoring 21 points to the 49ers' 10. Despite nothing on the board in the third quarter, the Giants finished strong with 10 points in the fourth quarter, holding onto their lead. The Giants' offense, led by Burt Jones' accurate arm and Bobby Hammond's rushing prowess, put up a total of 243 yards, 107 in passing and 136 on the ground. Hammond's performance was particularly noteworthy with 101 rushing yards and a touchdown on just 13 carries, earning him Offensive Player of the Game. The 49ers, on the other hand, had a more productive day on offense, amassing a substantial 462 total yards, split evenly with 232 in passing and 230 rushing. Roger Staubach led the team's passing attack with 232 yards and a touchdown, while Otis Anderson contributed 92 rushing yards and a touchdown. Despite the 49ers' superior control of the ball, with 35 minutes in possession compared to Giants' 24, the Giants' defense held firm. Cornerback Ray Rhodes was a pivotal figure, recording an interception and earning Defensive Player of the Game. Ultimately, the Giants' residence in the end zone was enough to secure a thrilling last-minute win. In the Week 7 matchup, the New England Patriots delivered a stinging defeat to the Chicago Bears with a final scoreline of 38-14. The Bears started strong, leading the first quarter 7-0. Their home advantage, however, proved to be insufficient as the Patriots took command with a 14-7 lead in the second quarter and maintained momentum in the last quarter, scoring a whopping 24 points. Patriots quarterback, Steve Grogan, put in an impressive performance, completing 28 of 31 passes for a total of 319 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Patriots dominated control of the ball, with a time of possession of 33 minutes and 47 seconds, compared to the Bears' 26 minutes and 13 seconds. The Patriots' offense was simply too strong for the Bears, amassing a total of 431 yards, compared to the Bears' 291 yards. Despite the Bears running back Bruce Harper's commendable performance, with 21 rushes for 75 yards and a touchdown, it was not enough to overcome the Patriots' powerhouse offense. On the defensive end, the Patriots' cornerback Mike Haynes proved instrumental, securing 2 interceptions. In the end, it was an exhilarating display of offensive and defensive coordination from the Patriots that secured their victory. In the 8th game of the week, the Baltimore Colts hosted the Houston Oilers in a nail-biter that saw the Oilers emerge victorious with a score of 24-21. With both teams taking a balanced approach to their game, the match was thrilling from start to finish, with the outcome uncertain till the last quarter. The Colts, led by the solid performance of their quarterback Steve DeBerg and running back Franco Harris, maintained a slight lead throughout the game. However, they couldn't hold on till the end, a strong push from the Oilers in the final quarter resulting in a loss for the home team. The Oilers' triumph can be attributed to their robust offensive play. Quarterback Marty Domrys maintained a commendable balance between passing and rushing, contributing significantly to the total yards gained. However, the star of the game was undoubtedly the Oilers' running back Don Hardman, who secured the title of Offensive Player of the Game with 29 rushes covering 148 yards, and a remarkable average of 5.1. Despite the Oilers suffering from 30 penalties and losing 3 fumbles, they managed to maintain control over the game, ensuring a win in the last quarter. This game once again showcased the unpredictability of football, where the tide can turn within minutes. In Game 9 of Week 7, the Atlanta Falcons flew over to clash against the Oakland Raiders. However, despite the home advantage, the Raiders were unable to hold the fort, surrendering to the Falcons with a final score of 24-10. The Falcons started strong, scoring 14 points in the first quarter and another 7 in the second, while the Raiders could only respond with 3 and 7 points respectively. Rain or shine, weather conditions were not reported to have influenced the outcome of this matchup. The Falcons' victory was largely attributed to an outstanding performance from their running back Delvin Williams. Williams rushed for a total of 123 yards with an average of 5.9 and scored 2 touchdowns. On the other side of the field, the Raiders' Ken Stabler put up a valiant effort, passing for 197 yards and scoring a touchdown. However, a key fumble from the Raiders' running back, Clarence Harmon, proved costly. Moreover, a higher time of possession for the Raiders, 30 to 41 minutes compared to the Falcons' 29 to 19 minutes, did not translate into more points on the board. The Falcons' defense, led by Fulton Kuykendall with 9 tackles and a tackle for loss, managed to stifle the Raiders' offense effectively. The Defensive Player of the Game was awarded to Falcons defensive end Dave Purifori, who recorded a sack and a forced fumble. In a game marred by rain and a biting wind, the Kansas City Chiefs edged a win over the Denver Broncos with a score of 9-0 during Week 7. The Chiefs' defense, led by leading tackler John Zook, held the Broncos to a mere 160 yards of total offense. Norris Weese, quarterback for the Broncos, struggled to find rhythm, managing to complete only 10 of 16 passes for 111 yards. The Broncos' running game was similarly stunted, with John Keyworth managing only 35 yards off 17 carries. On the other side, Kansas City had a modest offensive performance, with Ken Anderson delivering a solid performance with 108 yards from 12 completions out of 16 attempts. The Chiefs' running back, O.J. Simpson, had a total of 21 rushes yielding 55 yards, averaging 2.6 yards per rush. Despite the adverse weather conditions, the Chiefs managed to control the clock, holding possession for approximately 33 minutes. The Chiefs' offensive lineman, tackle Rufus Mays, was named the Offensive Player of the Game, while linebacker Brad Van Pelt stood out on the defensive side of the game, forcing a fumble and making a sack to be named the Defensive Player of the Game. In a commanding display of power and precision, the Detroit Lions humbled the Green Bay Packers on their home turf with a crushing 37-7 victory in Game 11. The Lions were a force to be reckoned with right from the start, leading with 27 points to nil at halftime. Green Bay, on the other hand, appeared disoriented, failing to score any points until the fourth quarter. The Lions' quarterback, Greg Landry, was in top form, delivering an impressive passing performance with 249 yards and 2 touchdowns from 19 attempts. Dexter Bussey was the star of the game, contributing significantly to the Lions' massive total yardage of 500 with his 149 rushing yards. His performance rightfully earned him the title of Offensive Player of the Game. The Packers, despite a decent total yardage of 297, faltered in their execution, largely due to the Lions' sterling defensive play led by linebacker Charlie Weaver. Weaver, who made 7 tackles and sacked the home quarterback once, was named the Defensive Player of the Game. The Packers' quarterback, Steve Fuller, despite throwing for 191 yards, couldn't seem to inspire his team to a comeback, falling notably short to the Lions' superb display. In a close and hard-fought game, the Seattle Seahawks managed to edge out the San Diego Chargers in the Week 7 matchup by a single point, with a final result of 10-9. Despite the Chargers managing to accumulate a total of 308 yards, against the Seahawks' 228 yards, the home team was unable to convert this into points on the board. The Chargers quarterback, Dan Fouts, had a modest game with 141 yards from 16 completed passes out of 23 attempts but was unable to secure any touchdowns. The Chargers rushing leader, Ron Springs, had an impressive game, breaking 118 yards from 13 rushes, averaging 9.1 yards per carry. On the other side of the ball, the Seahawks offense was led by quarterback Mike Wells, who completed 9 of his 12 pass attempts for 92 yards, including a critical touchdown. Sherman Smith led the Seahawks rushing game with 23 rushes for a total of 98 yards, averaging 4.3 per carry. Despite having fewer total yards, the Seahawks held onto the ball for a longer period, with a time of possession of 1,922 minutes compared to the Chargers' 1,678 minutes. The defensive player of the game was Seahawks linebacker Ron Crosby, with a total of 13 tackles, 2 for loss, and 1 sack, a performance which likely played a crucial role in ensuring the victory for the Seattle team. In Game 13 of the NFL Week 7, the Dallas Cowboys showed no mercy in their crushing defeat of the Los Angeles Rams with a remarkable 55-0 shutout. Played at the Cowboys' home ground, this game was a one-sided affair from the get-go with the Cowboys leading 28-0 at the end of the first quarter. The dominance continued through the second and third quarters with the Cowboys tacking on another 17 and 7 points respectively, while the Rams remained scoreless. Though the final quarter saw a more subdued performance from the Cowboys with a mere field goal, the damage was already done. The Cowboys, led by their quarterback Jerry Goldstein, who completed 13 of 21 passes for 407 yards and 3 touchdowns, amassed a total of 563 yards. Their running back, Tony Dorsett, had a field day against the Rams' defense with 26 rushes for 156 yards, averaging 6 yards per rush and scoring 4 touchdowns. He also contributed in the receiving department with 2 catches for 46 yards. This stellar performance earned him the Offensive Player of the Game. On the other hand, the Rams' offense struggled to get the ball moving, with quarterback Mike Barilla only managing to complete 14 of 16 passes for 103 yards. Earl Campbell, their leading rusher, managed 22 rushes for 90 yards with an average of 4.1 yards per rush. In the end, the Cowboys had control of the ball for roughly 27 minutes of the game, compared to the Rams' 33 minutes. However, the Rams' extra possession time didn't translate into points on the scoreboard. In a rain-soaked showdown, the New York Jets emerged victorious over the Minnesota Vikings by a score of 20-14. Both teams put on a display of power football, with the Jets rushing for a hefty 206 yards, led by Steve Jones, who averaged a whopping 9.1 yards per carry, scoring 1 touchdown. The Jets quarterback, Phil Simms, had a respectable performance, completing 12 of his 18 passes for a total of 126 yards. Despite the inclement weather, the Jets managed to keep their composure, committing only 4 penalties for 42 yards. Outstanding on the defensive front for the Jets was Greg Buttle, who recorded 11 tackles, with 1 for a loss. The Vikings, on the other hand, put up a solid fight, amassing 447 total yards, with 293 of those coming from the arm of Gary Marangi, who had 275 passing yards and 1 touchdown. The Vikings' ground game was led by Brent McClanahan, who averaged 10.7 yards on just 3 rushes. However, Marangi's performance was hindered by a fumble and 2 interceptions. Adding to the Vikings' woes, they were heavily penalized, committing 68 penalties for a total of 68 yards. Despite the loss, the Vikings' defense had a standout player in Matt Blair, who recorded 8 tackles, 1 for a loss. The defensive player of the game was awarded to the Jets' defensive end Reggie Doss, who had a remarkable performance with 4 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 1 forced fumble. And that's a wrap for Week 7, folks. What an incredible week of Retro Football League action it has been. We've seen big plays, fantastic finishes, and as always, a whole lot of heart put into every single game. I'm Lance McAllister, and it's been an absolute pleasure to bring the extra point to you. As always, keep the love for the game alive, and remember, in RFL, it's not just about the points, it's about the passion. See you next week for more RFL action. Until then, stay safe and take care.